The young eaglets were preparing to leave the nest and take their first flights when their grandfather swooped in for a visit. Perching on the edge of the nest, he wished them well. Curious, one eaglet asked, "Grandpa, what's your favorite thing to eat?" "Ah, that would be salmon, or maybe trout." "Oh, you'll find out soon enough," the old eagle replied. A granddaughter piped up, "What do you usually eat?" "Rabbits are always good. And squirrels, ever seen those?" "Yeah, they're always running around in the trees." "Well, keep an eye out," the grandfather said. "They're delicious." "An eagle eye," a cheeky grandson muttered, just before getting a swift smack. Another eaglet asked, "What about birds? Do we eat those?" "Some, sure." "Seagulls are easy to catch." A grandson hesitated, then asked, "There's this big white bird with long legs that lives by rivers. Do you eat those?" "Ah, you mean egrets?" "That's right. Have you eaten a lot of egrets?" The old eagle nodded solemnly. "Egrets. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention." A woman overhears her 7-year-old son playing with his toy train set. As he moves the train around the track, he stops and announces, "This stop is Los Angeles. If this is your stop, get the bloody hell off. If it's not, stay the bloody hell on." He moves the train again, stops, and says, "This stop is Seattle. If this is your stop, get the bloody hell off. If it's not, stay the bloody hell on." Horrified by his language, his mother storms into the room. "That is not how we talk in this house. Go to your room for an hour." An hour later, she lets him return to his train set, on the condition that he cleans up his language. He solemnly agrees. A few minutes later, she listens in as he resumes play. The train circles the track, then stops. The boy announces, "This is New York City. If this is your stop, get off. If it's not, stay on. And if you're wondering why the train's an hour late, blame the cow in the kitchen." The year is 2032, and the United States has just elected its first female and first Jewish president, Sarah Goldstein. A few weeks after Election Day, she calls her mother. "Mom, I assume you'll be coming to my inauguration?" "I don't know, Sarah. It's a 10-hour drive. Your father isn't as young as he used to be, and my arthritis is acting up." "Don't worry, Mom. I'll send Air Force One to pick you up, and a limo will take you straight from your door." "Oy vey, but what would I wear? Everyone will be so fancy-schmancy." "I'll have a gorgeous gown custom-made for you by the best designer in New York. And the food, you know I can't eat all those rich dishes you and your friends like." "Mom, I've got it covered. New York's best kosher caterer, just for you." After much vetching, Mom finally agrees. Fast forward to January 20th. Sarah Goldstein is being sworn in as President of the United States. In the front row, her mother beams with pride. She leans over to a senator sitting next to her and whispers, "You see that woman over there with her hand on the Torah, becoming President of the United States?" The senator smiles. "Yes, I do." Her mother leans in, flush with pride, and says, "Her brother is a doctor." Sophie had just gotten married. Being a traditional Italian girl, she was still a virgin. On her wedding night, she and her new husband, Luca, were staying at her mother's house. Nervous, she confided in her mother. "Mama, I'm scared." Her mother smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Sophie. Luca's a good man. Go upstairs and he'll take good care of you." So up she went. When she reached the bedroom, Luca took off his shirt, revealing a thick, hairy chest. Sophie gasped and ran back downstairs. "Mama! Mama! Luca's got a big, hairy chest! Sophie, mio caro, all good men have hairy chests." Go back upstairs, he'll take good care of you. So up she went again. This time, Luca took off his pants, revealing his hairy legs. Sophie shrieked and ran back downstairs. Mama, Mama! Luca took off his pants and he's got hairy legs! Sophie, all good men have hairy legs. Luca's a good man. Go back upstairs, he'll take good care of you. So, once more, she went upstairs. Now, Luca took off his socks, and Sophie saw that he was missing 3 toes on his left foot. Horrified, she ran back downstairs. Mama, Mama, Luca's got 1.5 feet. Her mother's eyes widened. Then she grabbed a spoon and said, Stay here and stir the pasta. This is a job for Mama. A man rushes into a police station, tears streaming down his face. He goes straight to the sergeant at the desk. Husband? Officer? My wife is missing. She went out yesterday to rescue people from the flood and never came home. Sergeant. Okay, sir. Let's start with some details. What's her height? Husband. Not sure. A little over 5 feet, I think. Sergeant. Weight? Husband. Not skinny, not really fat. Sergeant. Eye color? Husband. Brown, I think. Never really paid attention. Sergeant. Hair color? Husband. Oh, that changes a few times a year. Maybe dark brown right now. Sergeant. What was she wearing? Husband. Oh, so could have been pants. Or a skirt. Maybe shorts. Not really sure. Sergeant. What kind of car did she take? Husband. She took my Jeep. Sergeant. What kind of Jeep? The husband takes a deep breath and, through choked sobs, starts listing. It's a 2010 Rubicon with a Sprintex supercharger and intercooler. Diablo Sport, T1000 Trinity Programmer, TerraFlex Falcon 3.3. Shocks, 1350 RE Real Drive, Shafts, Method 105, Bead Locks, Toyo. 37-inch by 13.5-inch tires, Olympic off-road bumpers, rock hard cage, Poison Spider sliders, Magnum, 44 front axle, off-road Evolution C gussets, worn 10K front winch, 8K rear winch, bar-tacked seat covers, Delta, quad bar, Xenon headlamps, TerraFlex HD tie rod, Falcon steering stabilizer, TerraFlex 4-inch springs, performance slotted rotors, Monster HD track bar, surprise straps, hothead headliner, TerraFlex D44 diff covers, Wild Boar grill, Rugged Ridge hood, Drake hood latches, a Tuffy security drawer, and by now the sobbing has escalated into a full-blown breakdown. The sergeant, visibly moved, hands him a tissue and says gently, There, buddy. We'll find your Jeep. A little boy goes to his dad and asks, Dad, what is politics? His father thinks for a moment and says, Well, son, let me explain it like this. I'm the breadwinner of the family, so let's call me the money. Your mother manages the household, so we'll call her the government. You, my son, represent the people. Our nanny? She's the working class. And your baby brother, he's the future. Now think about that and see if it makes sense. The boy nods and goes to bed, mulling over what his dad said. Later that night, he hears his baby brother crying. He gets up to check and finds the baby has soiled his diaper. He goes to his parents' room, but his mother is sound asleep. Not wanting to wake her, he heads to the nanny's room. The door is locked, so he peeks through the keyhole, only to see his dad in bed with the nanny. Frustrated, he gives up and goes back to bed. The next morning, the boy says, Dad, I think I understand politics now. His father smiles. Good son, explain it in your own words. The boy replies, Well, while the money is screwing the working class, the government is sound asleep, the people are being ignored, and the future is in deep shitty. A duck walks into a pub and orders a beer and a ham sandwich. The bartender looks at him and says, But you're a duck. The duck replies, I see your eyes are working. The bartender exclaims, and you can talk. The duck responds, I see your ears are working. Now, can I have my beer and sandwich, please? Certainly, says the bartender. Sorry about that. It's just that we don't get many ducks in here. What are you doing around this way? The duck says, I'm working on the building site across the road. The duck finishes his beer, eats his sandwich, and leaves. This continues for 2 weeks. Then one day the circus comes to town. The ringleader walks into the pub and the bartender says, You're with the circus, aren't you? I know this duck who would be perfect for your show. He talks, drinks beer, and everything. The ringleader replies, Sounds marvelous. Get him to give me a call. The next day, the duck comes in, and the bartender says, Hey, Mr. Duck, I got a top job lined up for you with great pay. Yeah, says the duck. Where is it? At the circus, says the bartender. The circus? The duck asks. That's right, replies the bartender. Are you talking about that place with the big tent? Asks the duck. Yep, says the bartender. With all the animals? The duck asks. Of course, replies the bartender. With a big canvas roof, with a hole in the middle? Yeah, the bartender says. The duck pauses, looking confused, and says, What the heck would they want with a plasterer? Once there was a Viking who became such a powerful warrior that he decided to take on a new challenge. He sailed across Europe, challenging people to staring contests. So confident in his abilities, he promised to hand over all the gold he had pillaged to anyone who could defeat him. Word spread throughout Europe, reaching a couple in Ireland whose daughter was born without eyelids. Believing she was guaranteed to win, they sent a messenger to invite the Viking to Ireland for a showdown. The Viking gladly accepted the challenge, setting sail the very next day. When he arrived at their home, the Viking and the girl began their staring contest. Hours turned into days, and by the end of the week, the Viking's eyes were still wide open. The girl, exhausted, decided to forfeit, losing by default. Her parents were baffled. The wife turned to her husband and asked, how could he keep his eyes open for so long, even against someone with no eyelids? With no explanation, the husband shrugged and replied, You can lead a Norse to daughter, but you can't make him blink. A woman walks into a doctor's office carrying a baby. She's taken to an examining room and waits for the doctor. After examining the baby, the doctor notices the baby isn't gaining much weight and asks, Is he breastfed or on the bottle? Oh, he's breastfed, replies the woman. Well then, says the doctor, please strip down to your waist. The woman removes her top and bra and sits on the examining table. The doctor begins pressing, kneading, and pinching both breasts thoroughly for several minutes. After a detailed examination, the doctor motions for her to get dressed, then says, No wonder the baby is so hungry, you don't have any milk. The woman grins wryly and says, Of course I don't. The doctor is confused. Why not? With a chuckle, she replies, Well, I'm his aunt, but I'm sure glad I brought him in today. A couple invites their family over for Thanksgiving dinner and gathers everyone together for the holiday meal. However, the couple's children are late, which prompts the mother-in-law to grumble aloud, Ugh, your children, always late. Eventually, everyone arrives and takes their seats at the dinner table, but the mother-in-law insists on sitting at the head of the table, and no one has the energy to argue with her. A few moments later, as they all settle in, the hungry mother-in-law starts complaining again. Ugh, what's with the food? Why is it always late? Finally, the couple brings out the meal, mostly prepared by the wife. Everyone digs in, and the evening continues. As they reach the main course, the mother-in-law says, I better start clearing the dishes so we can at least get to the last dish on time. At that moment, the large wall clock hanging above the table suddenly falls, smashing the chair right where the mother-in-law had been sitting and nearly hitting her. Everyone stares in shock, and then the bride quietly mutters to herself, "Ugh, this clock, always late." 3 Englishmen were walking through a desert. They were tired, thirsty, and most of all, hungry. Eventually, they came across a nomad with 2 camels, one alive and one very much dead. The nomad said, "Hey there, you guys look hungry. I was about to start eating this camel, so I'll share it with you." The 3 men started arguing about who should get what. One of them said, "All right, guys, how about this? We'll take the parts based on the football teams we support." The first man said, "Well, I support Liverpool." So he got the liver. The second man said, "I support Hartlepool." So he got the heart. The last man said, "I support Arsenal, but I'm not hungry." At one point during a game, the coach called one of his 7-year-old hockey players aside and asked, "Do you understand what cooperation is? What a team is?" The little boy nodded in agreement. "Do you understand that what matters is not whether we win or lose, but how we play together as a team?" The boy nodded again. "So," the coach continued, "I'm sure you know when a penalty is called, you shouldn't argue, curse, attack the referee, or call him a peckerhead. Do you understand all that?" The little boy nodded once more. "And when I call you off the ice so another player can have a chance, it's not good sportsmanship to call your coach a hole, is it?" Once again, the little boy nodded. "Good," said the coach. "Now go over there and explain all that to your mother." On the last day of kindergarten, all the children brought presents for their teacher. The florist's son handed the teacher a gift. She shook it, held it up, and said, "I bet I know what this is. It's some flowers." "That's right," shouted the little boy. Then, the candy store owner's daughter handed the teacher a gift. She held it up, shook it, and said, "I bet I know what this is. A box of candy." "That's right," shouted the little girl. The next gift came from the liquor store owner's son, little Johnny. The teacher held it up and saw it was leaking. She touched a drop with her finger and tasted it. "Is it wine?" she asked. "No," said little Johnny. The teacher touched another drop to her tongue. "Is it juice?" she asked. "No," he answered. Finally, the teacher said, "I give up." "What is it?" "A puppy," replied little Johnny. A young woman walked into a store and approached the shopkeeper with a straight face. "Excuse me," she said, "do you have 12-inch condoms?" The store clerk nodded. "Yes, we do. How many would you like?" The woman smirked and leaned closer. "Oh, I don't need any," she said. "I'm just curious. Who actually buys these? Just tell me his name." It's a sunny day at the university when 5 professors, a physicist, a law professor, a political science professor, a chemist, and a statistician walk into an office and discover the trash can is on fire. The political science professor steps forward and says, "Don't worry. I'll take care of everything," and promptly exits the room. The physicist declares, "We need to put the trash can in the fridge to lower the temperature below the ignition point, and the fire will extinguish itself." The chemist chimes in, "No, we should cover the can so the fire uses up all the oxygen. Without reactants, it can't continue." The law professor interrupts, "Please stop blaming the victim. You haven't even proven the can is on fire." Meanwhile, the statistician is seen running around the room, setting everything else on fire. "What are you doing?" they all scream. He calmly replies, "I'm just getting a proper sample size." There were once twin boys, 6 years old, who had developed extreme personalities. One was a pessimist, and the other a total optimist. Concerned, their parents took them to see a psychiatrist. First, the psychiatrist treated the pessimist. Trying to brighten his outlook, the psychiatrist took him to a room filled with toys. But instead of yelping with delight, the little boy burst into tears. "What's the matter?" the psychiatrist asked. "Don't you want to play with any of the toys?" "Yes," the little boy bawled, "but if I did, I'd only break them." Next, the psychiatrist treated the optimist. Trying to dampen his outlook, the psychiatrist took him to a room piled to the ceiling with horse manure. But instead of wrinkling his nose in disgust, the optimist climbed to the top of the pile and began gleefully digging out scoop after scoop with his bare hands. "What are you doing?" the baffled psychiatrist asked. The little boy grinned and replied, "With all this manure, there must be a pony in here somewhere." Two men were sitting next to each other at a bar. After a while, one guy looks at the other and says, "I can't help but think, from listening to you, that you're from Ireland." The other guy responds proudly, "Yes, that I am." The first guy says, "So am I. And whereabout from Ireland might you be?" The other guy answers, "I'm from Dublin, I am." The first guy responds, "Sure in Bagora, and so am I." "And what street did you live on in Dublin?" The other guy says, "A lovely little area it was. I lived on McCleary Street in the old central part of town." The first guy says, "Faith, it's a small world, so did I." "And to what school did you go?" The other guy answers, "Well, now, I went to St. Mary's, of course." The first guy gets really excited and says, "And so did I." "Tell me, what year did you graduate?" The other guy answers, "Well, now, I graduated in 1964. The first guy exclaims, "The good Lord must be smiling down upon us." I can hardly believe our good luck at winding up in the same bar tonight. Can you believe it? I graduated from St. Mary's in 1964, my own self. About this time, another guy walks into the bar, sits down, and orders a beer. The bartender walks over, shaking his head, and mutters, "It's going to be a long night tonight. The Murphy twins are drunk again." A woman starts dating a doctor, and before too long, she finds herself pregnant. She and the doctor don't know what to do. 9 months later, just about the time she's about to give birth, a priest checks into the hospital for a prostate infection. The doctor turns to the woman and says, "I know what we'll do. After I've operated on the priest, I'll give the baby to him and tell him it's a miracle." "Do you think it'll work?" she asks. "Well, it's worth a shot," replies the doctor. So, the doctor delivers the baby and performs the operation on the priest. Afterward, he goes into the priest's room and says, "Father, you're not going to believe this." "What?" asks the priest, wide-eyed. "What happened?" "You gave birth to a child," the doctor says with a grin. "That's impossible," says the priest. "I just did the operation," insists the doctor. "It's a miracle. Here's your baby." 15 years later, the priest decides it's time to tell his son the truth. One day, he sits the boy down and says, "Son, I have something to tell you. I'm not your father." The son, looking shocked, asks, "What do you mean? You're not my father." The priest replies, "I'm your mother. The archbishop is your father." A married couple wakes up one morning, and while still lying in bed, the wife turns to her husband and says, "Maybe you shouldn't go to work today." "Why not?" the husband asks, a bit confused. "I think you've been working too hard. How about you take a few days off, pack a suitcase, and go stay with a friend? Just get away from all the stress for a while. The husband, eager for a break, quickly agrees. He jumps out of bed, gets dressed, and starts packing a bag. "Just out of curiosity," he asks, as he's getting ready, "how did you figure out I needed a break?" The wife replies with a smirk, "You were dreaming about work all night." "Really?" the husband says, now intrigued. "How do you know I was dreaming about work?" The wife grins and says, "Because every 2 minutes you kept shouting your secretary's name." A lady walked into a bar in Waco and spotted a cowboy with his feet propped up on a table. His boots were the biggest she'd ever seen. Curious, she asked, "Is it true what they say about men with big feet being well endowed?" The cowboy grinned and said, "Sure is, little lady. Why don't you come on out to the bunkhouse and let me show you?" Intrigued, the woman spent the night with him. The next morning, she handed him a $100 bill. Blushing, the cowboy said, "Well, thank you, ma'am. I'm mighty flattered. Ain't nobody ever paid me for my services before." The woman smirked and replied, "Don't be flattered. Just take the money and buy yourself some boots that fit." Roger, 88, married Jenny, a beautiful 45-year-old. Since her new husband was so old, Jenny decided that after their wedding, they should sleep in separate bedrooms, concerned that her elderly husband might overexert himself if they spent the entire night together. After the wedding, Jenny prepares for bed, expecting the inevitable knock on her door. Sure enough, the knock comes, and there stands Roger, ready for action. They unite as one, and all goes well. Roger takes his leave, and Jenny gets ready to sleep. But a few minutes later, there's another knock on the door. It's Roger again, still full of energy, eager for more. Surprised, but flattered, Jenny agrees to round 2. Afterward, Roger kisses her, bids her a good night, and leaves. Just as Jenny thinks she'll finally get some rest, there's yet another knock on the door. Roger is back, as fresh as a 25-year-old, ready for more. Jenny is amazed at his stamina, and they enjoy each other again. Finally, as Roger prepares to leave, Jenny says, "I'm truly impressed. At your age, you perform so well and so often. I've been with guys a third of your age who couldn't even keep up once. You're a great lover, Roger." Roger, somewhat embarrassed, looks at her and asks, "Wait, I was here already?"